Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the amazing Brad Hargis. Brad, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing a lot better now. This has been almost a year in the making, man, since we got to meet in person last year, and I'm so excited we finally are able to do this and make it happen. But
And even when we got
before,
to meet, it felt like it was this quick thing, and we didn't see each other almost that entire weekend.
right, well, that's good. Better busy than not.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
true.
So, but before we talk about why you're here, Brad, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. Your love of movies started very young, and after graduating from art school, you traveled out to California to pursue movie dreams, eventually working with a production. You've since taken your love to the airways with podcasting. 8 years podcasting
Yep.
multiple different shows from Old Man Brad, Apple TV Plus, The Cinema Guys, countless guest spots you've done. And for me, what's so amazing about that is the ability to juggle all these different things. Because not even just with podcasting, but all the things you've done with Q&As with Cincinnati Comic Expo, Anime Ohio, Horror Hound, hosting Frightful Fridays, a monthly horror screening. You are a judge at several film festivals. So when it comes to film in general, my friend, you are a very, very busy guy. So you graduated. What got you started in wanting to do podcasting to make that the avenue you wanted to go down?
Yeah, it just my friend Justin from the Cinema Guys and I, we used to do a weekly, just every Thursday night we would go see a movie, and it just became one night. Right, we were like, why don't we like record these and throw it out as a podcast, because people listen to those, right? Some people might listen to us just talking, so we did it. It took us a while to figure it out. I really had to listen to some podcasts and watch a lot of videos to figure out what to do. But
Yeah.
once we finally got it going, I mean, it's 8 years this week. We started
Congratulations.
podcasting, and it's just like, I love it. I absolutely love it. I've met so many great people. I've so many great opportunities with the Expo, Horror Hound, everything else. So it's just been fabulous.
And what I love about this is, like you were saying, I want to do a podcast. Let's do a podcast. And
Mhm.
to do it for 8 years, man, is truly something special. Like it really is. And I'm so envious of the amount of work and the work ethic that goes into that. And I always think it's very funny to go back and listen to how good our first episodes are. you know,
They're not.
it's
I mean,
funny
our
because like
first episode was one blue mic in the middle of a table. Like a lot of people start out, and it was just room noise and just terrible.
yeah. See, it's funny because like I've had people ask me like, have you ever thought about going back and deleting early episodes? No,
No,
no.
it's it's
That's
it's
who I
part of the
was at that
journey.
point. Right, exactly. And it's fun to
Yeah.
see the growth and stuff. And especially with someone like you that has so many different things going on. How do you manage the time to be able to do all these things?
Uh Lucky enough to be working from home, that I do a lot of it like on my lunch break. I'll come down to the basement and record an episode, and then edit it that night when, the kids go to bed. So
Sure.
I got to try to work in that free time where I can, when I'm not running my kids around everywhere, because they're getting that age it's sports all the time or
I
something.
get it. I get it, man.
But I,
And
I am lucky to have a wife that backs me too. That's like, she's very supportive of the whole thing, and she has fun with it too. So,
cool. And that is a huge thing. I'm lucky
oh
to
yeah,
where, my wife is my partner in Sledgehammer
yeah.
Horror. So she knows how important it is because it's just as important to her working on it. And when you have a partner that really has your back and understands
Mhm.
how much it means to the both of you, that's huge, a huge thing. Um,
Yes. Oh, it
I can't
absolutely
stop
is.
looking at Benny in the background. Like Benny just keeps catching my eye back there. I'm hoping he loves me because I hope that I'm on his good side.
Well, if everything wouldn't fall down if I pulled him out, I'd pull him out, because he
No,
does have a voice box in him with that you push
that's
his hand,
incredible.
and he has all the sayings from the movie.
That's amazing, man. If you guys haven't seen Benny Loves You, check it out. So
Yes,
much fun.
absolutely. It's a blast.
Yeah. So,
Just
Brad,
think
in
of
order for you
Elmo
to do,
trying to kill people, and there you go. That's what it is.
that's all we ever wanted. Um, so, in order for you to do all these things and be involved in horror to the
Mhm.
extent that you're involved, horror had to start for you somewhere. So now, Brad, I would like to go back to the past. and talk about
Way
what got you
back.
started in the horror genre. Your first horror movie, and Brad, the first horror movie you watched was.
The first horror movie that I can really remember resonate with is A Nightmare on Elm Street. I was probably about 10, I think, when I first saw it. When I watched it on HBO, it was on HBO because we had cable, and I was flipping through, and it was on, and it was one of those like I'm gonna sneak watch this because I'm probably not supposed to, so I'm gonna watch it without them knowing, and
That's
it's
awesome.
it scared me. Let me tell you that.
Oh, well, and do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
I think I was around 10.
What a perfect age.
I
If
know.
you're old enough to know about certain things and young enough to still have that naivety
And
about you.
and I sit and think about that, and I'm like, man, if my kids at 10 watch this stuff, I would be mortified. Like, no, you can't watch this. But all the stuff I watched at their age and younger, I'm just like, oh wow, it was a different time, a different
Mhm.
for
And you
sure.
can go back and you watch Nightmare on Elm Street, Jaws, stuff like that with your
Mhm.
10-year-old now that's seen like Smile and Saw, and they're like, cool, cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, okay, great, boomer, let's get you back to bed now. I'm sure these were very
exactly.
scary back then.
That
Um,
pacing's a little different
yeah,
and everything else. So, but
yeah. Well, I know you were young, sneak watching it on HBO, but
yes,
do you remember who you were
yes.
watching it with?
I watched it by myself because it was late at
Oh,
night. I had a TV in my room. It was just a little black and white TV. So, and I had the cable. The cable was ran into my room. So it was just late at night, flipping through, and it started, and I was like, "Oh, I've heard about this. I need to watch it. I'm going to watch it right now." And I,
dude,
I
I
turned
need to
it off.
watch this.
I turned it off a couple times, but turned it back on, like just for a minute or two, and then came back.
I can just picture a young Brad like, I need to watch this. And
Yes,
an hour 45 later, I did not need to watch
I
that.
did not.
So, obviously, Nightmare on Elm Street, such an iconic movie, even to this
Yes.
day. 40 years later, we're still talking about the impact that Nightmare on Elm Street has, not just on us as kids, but even on people now in pop culture. But do you remember the scene that affected you the most from Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yes. I mean, I still honestly, I mean, I'm 48 now. I still have dreams of the scene of him in the alleyway when he stretches his arms when they stretch out really long, and it's just like a silhouette of him and he's walking down and his arms are just kind of waving just a little bit. It scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid. And I think I turned it off at that point for a minute and it's like, okay, I think I can go back to it, but it's one of those, it's that scene particular in that movie. There's so many classic scenes in it,
Right.
but that one scene that I will always think about. If I think of the movie, that's the first thing that pops in my mind.
Because you have the arms and then you have the glove
Yeah,
scraping
scraping.
across, and you get the sparks flying, and you're just
Uh-huh.
like, oh, okay, this is scary as shit. And then he
You watch
starts to
it
sprint.
now. Yeah, you watch it now and you're just like, this is kind of silly.
Right.
But
See, I love the silliness of it because that's what we do when we dream. Our dreams aren't
yeah.
always, even when they're scary, they're still sometimes silly and
Mhm.
scary. But they're still terrifying, especially if it's somebody like that and you can't
Yeah.
wake up. So, we know what scene affected you the most. But Brad, what
Mhm.
would you say your favorite scene from Nightmare on Elm Street is?
Oh man, probably the waterbed scene. Just just because like you get the gush of, well, you know what? No, I take that back. It's probably Johnny Depp. I mean, it's still a waterbed scene, but Johnny Depp laying there with his headphones on like this, listening to the music, not knowing what's going on, kind of just dozing off, and
The
he
one thing Nancy
jumps
told him
out.
not
Yeah.
to do.
Yep, exactly. But there's
She was
so
like,
many
"Don't fall
memorable
asleep." And
scenes
he's like, "Oh."
like going up the stairs that are just like marshmallow, or the phone with the tongue, or the blood rushing out when she is rolling around. There's so many memorable scenes in the movie. We could probably you and I we could probably just list off a top 20 and just be like, oh yeah, this scene. What about this scene? What about
Yeah.
this?
Well, especially, I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
Yeah.
The tongue right, like, oh man, such an amazing scene, man. I love,
Oh
and it's so simple, but it's so scary at the same time.
yeah.
Like,
The Robert England's voice with everything. It was right place, right time, perfect casting, and it worked.
yes, Yes. So obviously we talk about your favorite scene, and Nightmare on Elm Street is a film that went with quality over quantity when it comes to the kills. As horror fans, we love the kills. We talked about the waterbed kill. Would you say that was your favorite in the film, or was there another one that stuck with you a little bit too?
Probably, as I'm trying to think, yeah, probably that one. Um, oh, I do love the scene where when they're laying there and it's just the wall and he slowly just pushes up against the wall and then comes back. There were many years I would watch that movie in my brain. I like to know how things work or how things
Hmm.
are done. So it's just like, how did they do that? How did they do that? And had to research and figure out, oh, it's so simple what they do. And because it looks like a wall.
Hmm.
Now
Yeah,
it's
it's
like, we'll throw
latex, correct?
CG in it. Yeah, kind of like a latex, so it's soft, so they just push up against
Yeah,
it.
so brilliant, so much
And
better
as
than CGI.
when you're younger watching it, you're just like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Every time I try to push on the wall, it doesn't
It
work.
doesn't do that.
So, Nightmare on Elm Street, whenever I talk about a film that's a part of a franchise, and Nightmare is a part of a much bigger franchise, I always
Yes.
ask, which is your favorite in the franchise? So we're talking about the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Is that your favorite film in the franchise, or
It
do you
is
have one that you
not.
like a little more?
Yeah, I have one I like a little more, and you've probably heard it from many horror fans in the community, and that's 3. Nightmare on Elm Street 3. It's so good. So good. I mean, we get to, I mean, Freddy is turned into a little more of a character
Yeah.
from that, but it's just so memorable, that one, and it's just fun. Nothing against the first one. The first one is a classic.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've always said the first one's probably the best made
Yeah.
film. Three
Yes.
is the favorite because three is one of the only slashers I can think of where you're actively rooting for every single one of the quote unquote meat bags to survive.
Yeah.
There isn't
And
one character except for maybe the wizard kid, but besides him, there's not really a character in the Dream Warriors where you're like, please take that guy out, please take that girl out.
yeah, no.
You're actively rooting. I was joking about the wizard kid, guys. That's a total inside joke with Ashley and I. But every character in that movie, you're like, I love these characters. They're a bunch of relatable characters you really genuinely care about, and you don't get that very often with a slasher.
No. And that one on, I feel like they tried to get really more and more creative with the kills. Like in 4 where they turned her into a bug, and it just kind of they tried to one up themselves every time. Because 3, we hadn't seen Freddy like this. Because 2 was a very dark film, very,
Right.
just a darker story and everything. And then we get to 3, and it's like, oh, it's a lot more lighthearted. We're gonna have fun with it. We're gonna do some crazy kills and just crazy scenes. Like, welcome to prime time, bitch.
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
And just like,
We're going to use Robert's charisma now.
yes, exactly.
And I agree with you. I think three is kind of like the pro. I always say like threes are usually my favorites in every franchise. It's weird. Um, Three in here is where Robert really got where
Mhm.
Freddy became Freddy.
Yeah.
Child's Play 3 is where Chucky became Chucky. Um, he had a little bit, a couple one-liners in part two, but
Yeah.
part three is where he really became the Chucky that we know and love. The Exorcist 3 is fucking fantastic.
It's underrated. I mean, the first one is probably still my favorite, but 3 is underrated, especially
Right.
after what we got from 2.
Oh god, don't even get me started. Part three made me hate part two even more for skipping out on part three
Yeah.
because I watched part two.
Yeah.
So we talk about Nightmare on Elm Street, obviously, what that movie means to you, and part three being your favorite in the franchise. But here for a second, I do want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you.
Okay.
My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Brad? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
My favorite horror movie of all time is John Carpenter's The Thing. I love that movie more than anything, and probably watch it once a year. It's special effects that still blow so many movies out of the water.
Mhm.
and it's 1982, and you just watch it and you're just like, this is just so good.
Dude, and a praise I've given that movie a lot. Not only the practical effects, the score.
Oh
The
yes.
score for that movie is so underrated, and it's such like that movie, arguably one of the best horror movies of all time. It's not my favorite, but I do think that in the scope of what is the best compared to what is my personal favorite, because those are two completely different things. Anybody that tells me John Carpenter's The Thing is the best horror movie ever made, I cannot come up with a logical, valid argument against that. Now, again, it's usually subjective, but that movie checks all the boxes for me.
No,
it's scary. There's suspense,
scary,
the score, the practical effects, the acting is so good. Just the dread of the isolation and not knowing who you can trust. Like, again, it checks every box of what makes a horror movie perfect for me. So
yeah,
it's I can't argue it. I can't.
I know a lot of people put that on the top of their list, but and that's, I think, where, because my enjoyment for horror, slowly came when I was a teenager. I'd start watching other things like Evil Dead. Night of the Living Dead is another one of my top 5 favorite films, and my dad would be like, "I got one for you. Have you seen this? Let's watch The Thing." And it was one of those, like, I was like, "Okay, cool." I'll watch it, and I'm like, "Whoa." This is different than anything I've watched yet. Like, the first time I ever saw the dog scene, I was just blown away. And then the chess scene with the spider head and everything else, I'm just like, my God, you could do all this crazy stuff in movies. This is awesome.
And it looks so good. We just did a watch along on the channel of The Thing. It's just like a fun revisit. And it still holds up so well today.
It does. And they came out in, what is it, 2011 with the prequel one. It's like, guys, no, it didn't work. You can't CG this stuff, man.
Right. And that's what I will say.
And I know it wasn't supposed to be.
Right. The story of the prequel, I think, is good. I like the prequel just fine. The CGI makes it so it's damn near unwatchable. Like, Mary Elizabeth Winstead did an amazing job. The stories, that ending, when you see the dog running, you're like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
I mean, this is before a lot of the movies were just called the same thing as the original. Halloween 2018, Nightmare on Elm. This wasn't happening then. So he's got The Thing. So we're like, oh, we're getting a remake. That's all we all thought, was they're remaking this. How the hell is this going to work? And as you're watching it, they're like, damn, they changed this up a lot.
And when then, like, it's the story before we get to the thing. I'm like, oh, this is it's right for a good story. They had the good story, but it was, the CG just.
And it's miserable. It's a miserable watch. Please, God, release the practical cut already. Like, that's all I want. Like, just give me that practical cut.
And I know they made big claims of, like, we're doing practical work in this, and this is gonna happen. And I think there were test scenes they threw out there, and you're like, oh my, they got it. This is gonna work. It's gonna work. And then I know the studio just got their hands at it, and
and much like it always does. Much like always. So, Brad, I've had an amazing time hanging out with you, and I can't wait to see you at Horror Hound in October. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to Nightmare on Elm Street, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing here, Brad, is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. What would your ranking of Nightmare on Elm Street be?
I'd probably say probably a 4.5, because I had to, that first time I had to shut it off.
Yeah, just shut it off.
Yeah. So and still that scene, that arm scene, is still something that sticks in my mind. Like, I still think about it to this day. So it's 40 years later, I'm still thinking of it.
Exactly, man.
When a movie can do that, it's a good
done
movie.
Its job.
Because there's so many horror movies. I mean, you and I, we've watched a lot. We've watched a lot of horror movies, and there's probably so many you'll see of, like, Oh, I forgot that movie even came out when I watched it because it wasn't memorable at all.
Great. So forgettable. I don't think anybody could ever say that about our boy Freddy.
No, not at all.
And I didn't say this at the beginning, guys, and I should have. I do have all of Brad's links down in the description. So make sure that you guys are subscribing to the podcast. Make sure you're following him on social media so you can become a part of his family as well. Brad, please don't go anywhere, my friend. I got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It does help build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.